Dave, would you like to introduce your cousin, please? It's going to be all yours in a minute, Robert. So,
I'd be thrilled to. Hi, Robert. Bob, it's good to see you. Bob's a food technologist and fishery consultant, and he's got more than 35 years industry experience in the fishery and built a life around the North Atlantic Ocean. He's a member of the Fishery Minister's Burnett Jordan's Atlantic Seal Science Task Team, and it's currently a one-year appointment that he has. He is an author of a great book on Battle Harbor, which is where our common ancestry comes from up in Labrador. And it's written in the words of my Uncle Bert, his father, called Battle Harbor is in My Blood. It's a great book. He keeps us, all our cousins, entertained. He's recently undertook a sea voyage from Hollywood, Newfoundland up to Battle Harbor with a small boat, distance of 380 nautical miles, and he let us know almost every day how he was doing. So we live vicariously through Bob. And today he's going to share with us a presentation that he gave to the St. John's Newfoundland Rotary Club in March 2019. So Bob, we're all thrilled to listen to what you have to say.
And thanks again, guys, for the invite. And my talk today is going to be about the problems with the East Coast fishery and the impact of seals. So the presentation is entitled "What's Wrong with Our Fishery? The Impact of Seals," and it's a common sense model that has been overlooked for too long. Why not productive oceans on the East Coast and I guess even the West Coast of Canada? You know, on the East Coast, we have a diversity of fish species. You have lots of plankton. We have pelagic fish, shellfish, and groundfish. We have ocean current interaction with the Gulf Stream, the warm water coming down along Newfoundland, and we have the cold water Labrador current, two ideal situations for fish. We have large shallow banks, inlets, and habitat needed for fish reproduction. We've all heard stories of the Grand Banks and the Hamilton Banks and the productive fish grounds we once had. We have very little pollution, and we have controlled commercial fisheries. We have regulations in place. We have quotas. We have fishing seasons. We can only fish with certain types of gear. We have a good science. We have education. And we have government programs to support our fishery. I mean, we're not a third world country. We should have a very good fishery, but we don't. Just a little slide there to show you the Labrador current coming down from Labrador alongside of Newfoundland and the Gulf Stream, two currents mixing, interacting. Recently, the government of Canada has talked about the blue economy and the ocean economy and sustainable use of the oceans. And you see from this particular slide that Canada is right at the bottom. You know, 1.6% of our GDP is considered from the blue economy. And Canada has the world's largest coastline at over 240,000 kilometers. So as a country, we must do better. Factors impacting our fishery in Atlantic Canada, particularly Newfoundland and Labrador. You know, commercial fishing is certainly a factor. In Newfoundland, we had 200,000 metric tons for the past number of years. And is it a manageable or controllable impact? It is. When you hear tell of natural mortality, such as disease that can happen with different species, is it manageable? Not really. Water temperature, we all hear about global warming and you know, the impact on the fishery, but is it really manageable? Long term, maybe, but certainly nothing quick. The ecosystem interaction and a variety of fish species, cannibalism, birds, invasive species, is it manageable? Very difficult to manage. And recruitment success. I mean, how successful is a particular species with spawning and the growth of a population? Is it manageable? Not really. But we do have a very large predator group. We have millions of alpha top chain predators. They're called seals. And is it manageable? It certainly is. So what's happening in Newfoundland? I guess the news makes it up to Toronto occasionally on what's going on. You know, our shrimp stocks are declining. The landings in 2019 were down to 47,866 metric tons, down from 95,000 metric tons in 2010. Similarly, our crab stocks are declining. We're down to 26,000 metric ton quota, down from 52,000 in 2010. Our pelagics, including capelin, mackerel, and herring, are all down. We've had a northern cod moratorium, which most everyone in Canada heard of, for 29 plus years, and yet we're seeing no recovery in northern cod. Our Atlantic salmon is at an all-time low, despite extreme conservation measures and protection. Our Atlantic salmon fishery closed in Newfoundland in 1992 and in Labrador in 1998, again, over 29 years ago. And we're expecting further reductions in quota cuts. Just to give you a quick insight on what's happened in the past 7 days in the local media. It started out with Atlantic salmon. The press and DFO announced that Atlantic salmon are close to extinction here in Newfoundland. We have the call now for the complete closure of the capelin fishery in Newfoundland. And today, the news today is that DFO wants to close the 3PS cod fishery. That's just in a period of a week. Just to give you an example, most of you guys are business people, to give you an example of the loss of shellfish value to Newfoundland industry. So the numbers I just referenced, and the quota reduction or catch reduction on crab of 49%. On fisher price alone, that's about $280 million lost. Similarly with shrimp, at 50% reduction, we're losing 105 million. Again, this is based on fisher value. It doesn't take in account processing jobs and the market value. And we're experiencing this with all of our commercial fisheries. So in Canada, Canada's east coast, we have 6 seal species. The harp seal, according to DFO's latest census in 2019, has reached 7.6 million animals. We have a hooded seal at 600,000. Gray seal, which is mainly in Nova Scotia but is expanding to Newfoundland, is now over 425,000 animals. We have about 2 million ring seals. Bearded seal is unknown, it's data deficient, and the harbor seals are 75,000. So all of these population numbers are best estimates. No one can actually physically count the seals, it's all an estimate. So predation by harp seals. The world's largest population of harp seals is located off Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's the largest by 5 million animals. So we have, as we just mentioned, 7.6 million harp seals. And the current population is 5 times what it was in the 1970s. Adult harp seals can weigh up to 150 kgs when fully grown, and they can live for 35 plus years. And seals eat fish every day, regardless of weather conditions or any imposed quotas. This slide just shows you the increase in harp seal population from 1970, when it was at about 1.5 million, to the last census at 7.6. No seal populations are endangered, and all are probably at their highest level in 100 years. So this particular photo just is taken this spring, and it shows a patch of seals off St. Louis, Labrador. And I throw in a little quotation there that reason, observation, and experience is the holy trinity of science. So it's not just data. You have to have reason and observation. Again, a couple of photos of harp seals and their numbers. The one on the left is kind of dated from the 70s, but it's like pepper on the ice. And when you have millions of animals, that's the type of thing that you would see. Quite common now in Newfoundland communities to see seals in around the communities. They come up on the land. DFO spends some time collecting them and returning them to the water. I think this week in Prince Edward Island, there were seals on the highway up there, and the same sort of thing. It had to be done. I'll just reflect back that 30 years ago, when I was 25 years old, I didn't see a seal. And when I grew up close to the water. We never saw seals. It would have been a rarity to see seals. Now, anywhere around Newfoundland and Labrador, you can see seals like are in this photo. So I throw in a slide here on Norwegian science and the Barents Sea harp seals, the same species that we have. And this is probably the best example of how to calculate how much a seal needs. So the scientists there calculated that that a female seal needs about 13,600 calories, and the male seal needs about 11,500 calories per day. The reason that female needs more is she gets pregnant and she carries the young. So they also figured out that on a mixed species diet, meaning some fatty fish and some lean fish, they figured out that the average kilocalories per kilo would be 1,500. And with that said, females would need 20 pounds of seafood per day for maintenance diet, and males would need 16 pounds per day. It's probably the best example, the best study that I've seen on that. So we took a look at the city of Toronto, which you guys are quite familiar with, and your population, of just over 6 million. That's what I found through Google in last year. The harp seal population is larger than the population of Toronto, and seals need 5 times the calories as humans need. So it's a considerable amount of food when you look at it in that perspective. So seals take the biggest bite out of the resource. At 7.6 million seals, that's just one species, and a conservative 10 pounds of fish per day, that can equate to 76 million pounds or 34,000 tons per day of seafood. The annual consumption at that rate can be 12.5 million metric tons or 6.5 metric tons per half year. Seals prefer high energy, rich seafood, and they target the fish livers and the roes. They don't eat the entire animal. We call it belly butting. And they like fatty pelagic fish like capelin and herring. And you'll see from down the road here in a couple of pictures that they rarely eat the entire fish. When we talk about harp seals and bedlamer seals, when they're done mating in the spring, which is handy about now this time of year, their fat layer is very, very thin. It's probably 1 inch. And when they come back to Newfoundland from visiting Greenland and the Arctic in the summertime, and they return in November, they have a 3+ inch fat layer. Now, to swim to Greenland and back, you're looking at 4,000 kilometers each way. These seals do not take rest. They're constantly moving in the water, and they're eating, a low carb, low saturated fat diet, yet they pack on this amount of fat. So you can imagine how much they're actually eating. This slide again just shows a comparison of the Newfoundland commercial fishery in comparison to harp seals in terms of tonnage. Our fishery accounting for 200,000 tons total inshore and offshore, and harp seals just in a half year at over 6 million metric tons. Harp seal is an alpha predator, sometimes referred to as a sea wolf, and it eats all species. Here's a very large seal, greater than 300 kgs, and you can only imagine that he's eating a lot more than 10 pounds of fish a day. This particular shot is of a seal stomach with snow crab. And snow crab right now is the primary industry in Newfoundland. If we didn't have snow crab, we would have no fishery. All their fisheries would close. This is the economic driver. Now, what we're seeing in these photos is the seal eats the female crab. It's smaller than the male. The male is the commercial species that's caught. They do not keep the females. The females are typically too small to get entrapped. And if they were entrapped, they would release them. But the seals here, they target them because of the roe. They target them because of the eggs. That's where the nutrition is. You can actually see one here that's just out, the whole body of the crab is there. So seal impact on salmon, char, and trout. This is common. The photo on the left was taken 2 weeks ago in Crabs River. That's a licensed salmon river. And you have seals in the river like this. The one on the right is 5 kilometers up the Codroy River in fresh water. This is not natural habitat for seals, yet for the past 20 years, this is what we've been seeing. And we have DFO telling us that, our salmon is extinct. I think there's a logical reason for that. Seals eat salmon. Here's another shot of what we typically see in a seal stomach if it was cut open. These two seals with herring, large amounts of herring, in the vicinity of 20 or 25 pounds in each case. And seals eating cod. This is what I referred to earlier about belly biting. This is what you typically see when seals eat codfish. They target the roe, and they target the liver, which is rich in oil. They never eat the fish head, and they rarely eat the body. So, normally I would show a video with this presentation, but because of time, I don't use it. But there was a German television program done in 1999, and they went underwater to look at the bottom of the ocean, and the bottom of the ocean was white with dead fish. Seals also destroy fish in fishing gear. This particular halibut, a prized fish, and a lot of people enjoy a feed of halibut. Well, seals do too. So they've attacked the fish on the gear, and that's quite common all over Atlantic Canada. You see when you're hauling fishing gear, seals are hanging around and eating some of the fish. I show this slide because it shows the numbers, the population of seals going along the bottom there from the say 1910 right up to the 1970s. The seal population was below 3 million. And then you see right to the right of the graph there that it goes up sharply. So in the 80s and the early 90s, seals are approaching 7 million. And in 1992 was when we called for the cod moratorium. Now this particular graph is complete opposite. You see that we had very high productivity of cod going along until we hit the late 80s, early 90s, when the cod moratorium was called. And according to the previous graph, that's when seal populations seemed to get out of hand. So when you hear tell of Cossawick and Sarah and the designation of species at risk, most all of our species on the East Coast are at risk. They're in a stage of special concern. They're threatened, or they're in a critical. None of the seal species are in that category at all. We look at the science provided by DFO. Sometimes we question whether it's objective or protective seal science, protective meaning seals. This particular slide was taken, one of many, which DFO seems to, and have been for years, crossing out the impact of harp seals. At the same time, they have check marks by the gray seal, which is off Nova Scotia. The gray seal has a population of about 500,000 animals, the harp seal 7.6. So we have 14 times the population of gray seals, yet DFO is reluctant to admit the impact of seals, harp seals, on our fishery. So we looked at productive oceans. I mean, all countries are experiencing impacts of global warming on the ocean ecosystem, not just Newfoundland or Atlantic Canada. Norway is part of the Atlantic Ocean, and they have a productive and sustainable commercial fishery year in and year out, very little crisis. Norway's cod quota is 800,000 tons, as opposed to, I think ours right now is 14,000 tons. Iceland has a productive fishery. Their cod quota is over 200,000 tons, and they have a very good fishery for many species. The fishery is very important to both Iceland and Norway's economy and society. The common thread is neither country has a significant seal population. They fish their fisheries hard, and they have for many, many years, but they don't have a big seal population, and both countries continue to take action to control the numbers. This graph just shows you basically the seals that are found in Norway and Iceland in comparison to Canada. Norway has 2 million harp seals. They're located mainly to the north. Because of the receding ice pack, they don't come close to Norway in recent years, in the past decade anyway. And you see Canada here, we have the 7.6 million harps plus 2 million other seals. And Iceland, last survey on Iceland, 25,000 seals. I include this, and this is from a Norwegian scientific report on fisheries. And this is their wording and their data. And you see the two valleys here when all their production was down. in the late 80s. And they, right above it, they call it a seal invasion. And similarly, in the mid-90s, the fish stocks dipped, and again, they called it seal invasion. So I had the opportunity to question the presenters, and I said, you know, how many seals were we talking about when the fishery went down? And he said, you know, probably around 2 million. So I followed up and said, you know, we have 7.6 million harps, plus other seals, and they've been around since the early 90s. They haven't left. Would that cause a big impact? And the scientist replied that it would cause a significant impact, in his opinion. So when there is seal harvesting, and there hasn't been very much in the past number of years, there was no seals taken last year because of COVID. So we have a regulated harvest, mainly use small boats, inshore fishers. They are professional, they are certified participants. You have to go through a training course in order to have a seal license. The hunt itself is a veterinary approved process. It's been studied by various veterinarians around the world. They do it with a high caliber rifle, and they have a 3-step process to ensure a humane kill. Again, there's established quotas, the season, and DFO imposes regulations. White coats, which you see around in a lot of the negative publicity campaigns, they haven't been hunted in over 38 years. So there's no fishing or no hunting for white coats. And the seal fishery provides food and income at a time of year when there's no other fishing activity in Newfoundland and Labrador. So at this time of the year, when typically there would be a hunt, there's no other fishing taking place. So, you know, it's important to the coastal communities. I think there's an environmental protection opportunity, and the seal population needs to be substantially reduced. We need to correct the long-term imbalance in the ocean ecosystem and lower the alpha predator. The options include, I'll just jump to the last, it's full utilization. I mean, we're not talking about culls, we're talking about full utilization of the animal. And if we do so, the struggling fish resources can rebuild. And we would provide a long-term conservation opportunity to sustainably rebuild all commercial fish stocks at the same time. And if we did this correctly, we would not threaten any of the 6 seal species in Atlantic Canada. And the options include to utilize the seal resource for domestic food and international humanitarian projects. Full utilization of the animal, the skin, the meat, the bone, the organs, and fat. Produce it all. Produce nutrient-rich protein powders. Seal is high in protein, extremely high in iron and other minerals. We can make it easy to mix with foods and water. We can use it for pet food ingredients and omega-3 oils. We all know about omega-3 oils. Seal oil provides the best quality omega-3 known anywhere. You know, it's produced from a mammal, and we're mammals, it's more easily absorbed. And it also has a third omega-3, which is not found in fish. Two pieces of information on the bottom, that according to the World Health Organization, there's 795 million people in the world who are malnourished. And approximately 9 million people die of starvation each year. This is statistics prior to COVID. Those numbers are much higher now. So we have an opportunity. We can help the world and at the same time help our fisheries. There are many uses. So I'll just go through quickly. I mean, we can have nutrients and health food products. We can have food, frozen seal. We can do protein powders. We can do pet foods, fertilizers, and meals. It's a natural wild product. It's abundant. It's low in saturated fat, high in protein, 0 greenhouse or carbon emissions coming from the seal. And like we talked about, it has a humane regulated harvest with a quota, and the output would be a balanced ecosystem benefit. A little clip there of the seal oil and the capsules. I've done business with people in Toronto for many years. There's a lot of manufacturing capability there, and they do soft gel and capsules, and they've been selling their product throughout Canada and into Asia. Some pictures there of seal meat and the seal meat powder. I mean, Canada has been known to provide wheat and grains as part of a food program. similarly, seal meat could be utilized in the same format. So in order to do this, we need cooperation by industry, society, and governments. And we have to develop the solution locally. We need cooperation between the Atlantic provinces, Quebec and BC. BC has big issues and because of seals and sea lions in their fishery. We need Indigenous participation, that of the industry, provinces, and federal government. And we need to identify fishing nations and states with similar seal problems. There's lots of countries right now, because of the Marine Mammals Protection Act over the past 40 odd years, that seals have rebounded and now they're an issue. We need to work with research institutions and universities, and we need to provide proof of the health benefits and links to common diseases like diabetes, arthritis, cardiovascular health, iron deficiency, etc. I believe seal can be a raw material that can help with all of that. The final slide is science is not a substitute for common sense, but an extension of it. So, in addition to scientific principles and data, we have to use common sense. And if we look at seals and look at what they're eating, then I think we can figure out that they're having a big impact on our fishery. I've done it.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob?
I have a question, Bob. I mean, this sounds a bit like we slaughter thousands of animals a year for food, whether it's chicken, cows, sheep, etc., etc. What's the difference here? What's preventing the Atlantic, provinces from harvesting this? Like, is it regular? Who are the people who are stopping all this? It seems ridiculous. It's as bad as the oil in Alberta. They won't let us get that out to the coast at all. This seems an easier, well, not easier, but a similar thing that we need food, and we don't mind slaughtering cattle and etc. etc. What's the big holdup with seals, etc.?
Yeah, I think that the animal rights groups, back when there was an offshore hunt.
Jane Fonda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and back when there was an offshore hunt, and I mean 40 years ago, they were killing whitecoats, and I think the image of whitecoats, young seals, and ice, it really harmed the industry, and since then. There's been a lot of propaganda, and a lot of these images are still used, even though there's no longer a hunt for young animals. And in terms of Department of Fisheries and Oceans, with the recent closures that we've just experienced, they draw no link to seals, and they clearly state that their science does not show any link to the fishery problems because of harp seals. And that's the reason I use the reference to common sense, because you really have to look at the population and how much they need. And I mean, we had the moratorium now for 30 years on cod, and it hasn't recovered. There's been no fishing, so they can't blame it on fishing. And we're seeing all the stocks going down. And the only population that seems to be thriving is seals. And Alan, I mean, the use of seal, you're absolutely right. It's no different than any other animal. It has to be done correctly, and it has to be done humanely. And I believe there's lots of products that we can make that would be a benefit to Atlantic Canada. And we do need food. The world is crying out for food. And if we don't watch what we're doing here on the East Coast, we're not going to have any fish to offer anyone. And we once had the greatest fishery in the world, and it's gone.
And then we'll just be importing the stuff like everything else, which is ridiculous, right?
Absolutely.
Then there's the ecological effect as well. I mean, if fish die off, the whole of that area, I mean, the entire ecology of the place is thrown off. In fact, what you're describing is already an imbalance because of the seal.
And you got a question?
Yeah, no, I'm still go back to Alan's question. So is it a regulatory problem or is it a you can't sell the product problem?
Seals are cute. That's the problem.
Well, more needs to be done at both levels of government to assist with marketing. I mean, the European has a ban on seal products, and there's a few countries in Asia that still import. Canada was close to signing a deal with China, which really would have made a tremendous difference, but that deal never got ratified. And it's been 8 years since that file has been active. So, the animals are there. There is an existing quota which is not being taken. And there needs to be, assistance put in from government like Global Affairs to assist with marketing and, creating a better impression for seal.
You got a question?
Yes, I have a kind of a practical question. So how many, maybe I missed it, maybe you said, how many are we killing? I mean, what's the number in the East Coast or so? And I can only imagine it's a very high number. So, and you said there's a high-powered rifle. I'm a hunter myself, so I have no problem with that. But I mean, with one rifle, you can kill only so much. And then that's I want to know how do you kill them? How do you cull them and kill them? You can't be with one high-powered rifle. You need thousands of people firing like for a long time. That can't work. And then, but then I have a second question that goes with it, if I may. I'm just interested in this. You said it's 3-step humane process for shooting. So if you maybe at the end of the answer could put this one in, that would be. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the take last year of Harp Seals would have been less than 2,000 animals last year. The take in the past 5 years on average would have been less than 25,000 animals per year. We're not tapping into the quota at all. Again, there's no point in killing or processing the animal unless you have markets, and until markets are built up and the products are built up, then there hasn't been a great demand. Primarily until recent times, the seal, even the larger adult seal, was used for garments, was used for clothing. So people would tan them and make jackets and purses and boots and stuff like that. And you would utilize the meat where possible. But going forward, we have to have a full utilization program, and we have to target the older animals.
No, you said this all, but my question was, how do you actually kill such a large number?
Yeah, and it is with rifle, and so each vessel that would go out would they have a perch. They have a perch on the top of the boat, and they have an experienced rifleman. And they're very good with their shot, and then the three-step process kicks in. So when you actually shoot the animal on ice, in most cases it's not in the water. Most times it's on ice, and then they use the club after it's been shot. So they strike it with a sharp blow, and then they cut the main arteries. And they check the animal. The third step is check the animal for reflex and eye movement, just to ensure that it has been killed.
We don't do this when we shoot deer.
No,
we shoot.
No.
That's it.
But it's a very stringent regulation, and it was developed like with veterinarians in part of it. And there's very few animals that actually struggle or suffer. It's pretty instant.
Thank you.
Benny?
Nature is very good at keeping balance until we kind of screw it up. But what are the natural predators for these seals? Do they have a natural predator?
Killer whale.
Yeah, killer whales certainly would be one, and polar bears. Polar bear population is doing well. In northern Labrador and in the Arctic, their numbers are not in as bad a shape as people would have you believe. But certainly, natural predation is not going to control the seal herds. There's talk with continued global warming that there'll be reduced ice pack and their habitats will be changed, and they'll have less success with birth and stuff like that. And that may happen, and maybe Mother Nature will help out. But at the present time, we haven't seen that. Over the past couple of decades, the population has been stable, and the numbers are not reduced.
Well, maybe I missed it somewhere along the way, but what caused the explosion in the population going so high?
That's a good question, Gordon, and I don't think I elaborated on that in this presentation, but what happened was the implementation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act in the early 70s, and that stopped the offshore hunt for seals. So back in, all up through the early times, through the 50s, 60s, up until the 70s, when you had a hunt, there was international participation. I mean, Norwegian vessels would come over and they would take great numbers, and Canadian vessels were taking great numbers. I mean, back then, it was not uncommon to harvest 300,000 animals a season or more. Up, I think the high point might have been 500,000. So when that stopped it was the late 70s when it finally came into effect, early 80s. There was no big hunt. There was no big fishery. And as soon as that happened, the seal population, the harp seal in particular, just exploded.
Okay. David?
You talked about sterilization as a potential way of controlling them. Could that be done like with, one of these, the guns that shoot like a vial of some sort of sterility inducing type or birth control into them? Is that how it's normally done, or is there another method of sterilizing?
Yeah, I would think that's how that would be done. I throw it out as an option and include it only as an option because that's how serious the situation is here. I mean, if we don't do the full utilization, then we have to look at everything that's available and controlling the population for a couple of years when the animal can live to be 35 years old. It is something that can be looked at, but primarily it would be full utilization, create value, and if we can check off the humanitarian side and provide food to people who need it, I think it can be a good news story.
It's a marketing problem as well.
Yes.
Okay. Barry, thank you, Bob. Barry, would you like to thank Bob?
Can I ask one last question?
Okay, this is the last one.
Okay. Robert, I worked in Newfoundland for many, many years, and I have found in the 70s and 80s, the fishermen were always talking about how the seals are taking over the fish. One of the problems that I found was that the seal meat doesn't particularly taste good. If only the seal meat tasted good, there would be a whole industry around it. And I think that's one of the big problems. Do you think so?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to say that it doesn't taste good, but it has a characteristic flavor, and it's a sea flavor. It's an oily type taste to the meat. And, it is an acquired taste, but I'm sure there's lots of foods around the world that different people would find taste different. In the case of seal meat, and like a lot of other protein sources, you're able to wash it and clean it, and you're able to add flavors to it. I've cooked with seal before, and to be honest with you, I'm not a lover of seal in its pure raw form. But if you add spices and you add different things to it, then you can change the flavor profile. So while a lot of people on first taste might find it a little bit different, there are things I'm sure that people could come up with to make it taste different.
Okay, thank you. Barry, please.
Yes, Robert, on behalf of the club, I'd like to thank you for an absolutely excellent presentation. And you can tell from all of the questions that you've really opened a lot of eyes here.
Mhm.
And I read the paper every day, and then I check the internet, and I look at all of the news, and I really don't understand why this isn't a top news item. Why you have to come to our club to tell us all of this information that the whole of Canada should know. It's really something very, very important for the environment, for our fisheries, for all kinds of industries. And this is something that Canada has always done well, along with vaccinations. We used to do well too. And it would be nice if we were able to take this message to the powers that be and get them to make some changes. But I would just like to thank you. And I didn't think there was going to be much to this presentation. Fisheries, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize the issue. Now I realize the issue, and I hope that you get the support that you really need.
Yeah, no, and Barry, thank you very much, and thank you to your group, and thank you for the questions, and David for setting this up. Certainly appreciate the opportunity. Yesterday I was on a Zoom with the Newfoundland caucus, the 6 MPs and 23 other people. It is becoming an issue, and you know, if we want food in the future, I think we have to look at it.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Now, as I mentioned in the email, you can hang around if you want, but I'm sure you're very busy. So,
very, very nice to meet you all, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.